I really wish I'd known this secret around grooming. And that is, you don't have to get it all done at one time. Sue taught me that.
Yeah.
You'll hear more about that later. But it's okay if
It's
you just do
okay.
part of it at one time.
Transformational. There you go.
I had no idea, but it's brilliant. Today we're talking about helping you help your care receiver with grooming. And we have 4 main tips.
Yes,
Sue,
we do.
you ready to get started?
Absolutely.
All right.
Welcome. We're Sue Ryan
And Nancy Treaster.
This podcast brings our years of experience in a variety of family caregiving roles to prepare you to navigate your caregiving journey.
We're sharing our personal experiences, not medical advice. And because it's our passion to support you on your journey, we believe no topic is off limits.
We're bringing you practical tips
And candid conversations.
about the good, the bad, and
yes, the ugly.
in family caregiving.
Let's get started.
And so today, what we're talking about are 4 different areas.
Mm-hmm.
One is shaving.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is trimming their toenails and fingernails.
Mm-hmm.
The third one is brushing their teeth.
Hopefully.
And yeah. And the fourth one is trimming their hair. So are you ready with tip number 1?
I am. So
right.
we're going to start with shaving. And the first thing we're going to talk about with shaving is, as early in the process as possible, try to convert your care receiver to an electric razor.
Yep.
It's going to be safer for them as they transition through this process to be using an electric razor if they're not already. It will be safer for you because you will eventually be taking over shaving. So an electric razor is a must. Plus, if you do move them into a care community, they only allow electric razors. Now, early in the process, you'll be doing what we typically are doing. Same with like in the bathing and dressing episode, you're just prompting.
Mm-hmm.
And you're walking in and saying, oh, have you shaved today? Let's go shave. And you need to hang around, make sure that it's actually happening. And you'll just be prompting. And you'll find over time that the next phase will be, you'll need to inject yourself in. It's a good way to actually begin the transition to taking it over. And the way to inject yourself into the process is say, oh, you did a great job, but you missed a spot right here. Do you mind if I shave that spot? So you're just beginning to, get involved in the process. Number 2, it's actually, if you're not used to shaving with electric razor or shaving someone else, you're kind of getting used to the idea yourself on exactly how this is going to work. So you inject yourself into the process, and eventually you will be taking over shaving.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we talk about taking over shaving, let's think about women for just a second. For men, we're really just talking about shaving their face at this point, and that continues through their journey. But for women, just observe how, when they forget about shaving or aren't doing a very good job of it, convert them to an electric razor, of course. But, your choice there is more typically just to let it go. If you think they're fine with it. If they're uncomfortable with it, then please help them. But otherwise, just let it go.
We've heard that a lot in support meetings, is
Mm-hmm.
that the caregivers were trying so hard to shave their loved ones. And then they finally gave up. Their loved ones were okay.
Yeah,
I mean, they didn't say anything. Yeah. So give it a try. If it just observe.
Yes. So observe. There'll be a time where you'll just let it go. So you have to find out when the right time is for them, that they're comfortable just letting it go. So back to a man and their face.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you're helping, remember, just with spots right at first.
Yep.
And eventually you're going to take over. Now, there's a point where you're taking over and you're getting into that messy middle Sue and I talk about periodically, where you're invading their space and they're not happy about it. So there will be a period of time where shaving, even taking over shaving, is difficult. They're annoyed with you. They push you away. They don't want you have anything to do with it. And this is a point where you have to leverage that secret that I talked about at the beginning. Doesn't all have to get done at the same time. So first, I'd suggest when they're at that point, when you're trying to shave them, if they're really annoyed and not participating well, you want to try to find a time where they're as calm as possible. Often when they're sleeping, or when they've just had a meal and they're just completely calm and rested, and they're resting anyway after a meal, that's a great time to try the shaving process. For my husband, he would this is in the process at this point where he was still getting in the bed, taking a nap. And he would get in the bed, take a nap. And after a while, it was time to get him up because we didn't want him to sleep too late into the day. It would affect his nighttime sleep. So we'd be trying to get him up. He didn't want to get up. He didn't want to get up. So we had a strategy. We'd get the electric razor out. So one of two things happened. Either we got a great shave in
Because he didn't wake up.
because he didn't get up, or he got up because it was annoying him. So, we won it. We won either way.
So that was 2 tips in one. If you got ways you want to try to get him out of the bed.
And I know you shaved Jack mostly when he was asleep as well during this time.
I did, yeah. It was much easier to shave him when he was asleep. He had a very heavy beard. And so it was work to do. And so it took a little bit longer, which also goes toward making sure. I'd never used an electric razor. You were getting the tip on the mustache. I was getting the tip, and the guys were all saying, you have to make sure you change the blades the first time you ever feel it pull.
Well, and another good point that goes with that, also, you need to shave them every other day. I think there was a point when my husband was fighting us, we got to every third day, but depending on how quickly their beard grows, because it will pull when it's long, regardless of how sharp the blades are. So you really don't want it to go more than every other day. Now, if you only get half a face shaved on one day and half a face shaved on the other, so what? But just realize the longer it is, the worse it'll pull. Or if you're shaving on a consistent basis and it's pulling, you need to change the blades.
Right. Yes.
All right. Let's move to tip 2.
All right. So tip 2 is about trimming their toenails and fingernails. And I'm going to start with a disclaimer. What I learned is that when someone is diabetic, you have a doctor trim their toenails and fingernails. So it's very important that I've got the disclaimer. I'm not talking about anyone who there's a medical reason why you wouldn't trim their toenails or fingernails. So, big start with that. Okay. So as with other grooming, when we're cutting their fingernails and toenails is something that we observe in the beginning. And again, to the concept of the notebook, start looking at the pattern of how they naturally trim their toenails and their fingernails. And it'll make it easier for you when you start doing it because it's less of something that they're trying to adjust to that's not the way that it was. So you're learning how they're doing it. And then as you did with gradually inserting yourself, you gradually start inserting yourself. And the way that we did it with my dad and with my husband is that they trim their nails. And I'll say, oh, honey, there's a little bit of a jagged edge there. May I please soften that for you? So I'd get the file and kind of help soften it. And then do the next one when they did the next one. And it gradually over time got to where I would file the first one, then I would go ahead and trim and then file the next ones. The other thing is that I'm big on doing things during the napping time when they're asleep, or sometimes like when they're in the eating process, when they've been eating and things like that. Jack, because he was good for about one nail. He would just start pulling it away. So I would do one nail, and I was big on when he was asleep, I would do it.
And this happened to be just going to the secret tip that we started with. This was the one where I called Sue and I'm like, Sue, we are really struggling to get his nails cut. This is crazy. And she's like, so are you trying to cut them all at one time? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, well, why? Just do one and give him a break and
call it
try again. Yeah, try a few hours, try tomorrow. Who cares? And I'm like, oh, that's a good idea.
So one other piece
you have
that
permission not to do it all at once.
Absolutely. Lots of permission on that one. Lots of grace and lots of permission. All right. Shall we move on to tip 3?
Let's move on to tip 3, which is about cleaning teeth. So first, let's talk about the dentist. You're going to go to the dentist, probably the normal dentist. You would have gone every 6 months. I would quickly tell the dentist what's going on. And when I did, the dentist said, you need to start coming every 3 months. That is the most common thing that they'll do because their dental care, your care receiver's ability to maintain their dental care.
Dental hygiene.
Yeah, the dental hygiene in any way that's close to normal will decline fairly quickly. So you'll start going to the dentist every 3 months. That will get more difficult. I did go to a webinar on dental care for people with dementia, and it was by a dentist who specializes in dental care for people with disabilities. And she said in many cities, not all, but in many cities, there are dentists who specialize in people with disabilities, and people with dementia fall into that category. So you may want to try to transition to a dentist that focuses on people with disabilities, just so you can extend the dentist part of this process as long as possible.
And we had in the care community, they have dentists who will come in. They're traveling dentists who will come in. The other thing we did very, very early on with the diagnosis is get x-rays, find out if there are any cavities or anything else that's dental work that needs to get done.
The real story here is the actual dentist is going away.
Yes, that is true.
There will be, at some point, dental care is only done at home.
Yeah.
And so everything I talk about from here on in is really how you're going to, the part of the dental care that you're going to take ownership of. So let's go to the home dental care. First thing, similar to everything we've talked about so far, you're going to start by reminding them to brush their teeth, check to make sure they put toothpaste on their toothbrush. It's like using the soap. It's one of the first things to go. So when you remind them to brush their teeth, go back there with them and just watch and make sure that there's toothpaste on the toothbrush when they brush their teeth.
And as you said, brush your teeth at the same time.
Model the way.
Model it.
I would brush my teeth the exact same time and stand sort of and brush them and make sure he was seeing me brush my teeth, modeling the way. So that's a first transition. Second transition is you'll get the toothbrush out and put the toothpaste on it yourself and hand it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Next transition, put the toothpaste brush out, put the toothpaste on it, and you will start the brushing process, and then they'll actually, muscle memory, right? They'll take it over and finish brushing their teeth. All good. But eventually you're going to be brushing their teeth.
Yes.
And when that time comes, take get a very soft bristle toothbrush. We'll talk about electric toothbrushes in just a second. But you want a soft bristle toothbrush, and you want much less toothpaste than you would normally put on because the spitting is gone.
They don't know how to spit anymore.
Don't understand it. So we're going to put a small amount of toothpaste on the toothbrush, and we're going to rub it in to the bristles, because we don't need it just to plop off in their mouth somewhere. So we're going to rub it into the bristles and brush their teeth as best you can. You can also take a break from this, but this, as in shaving, goes through sort of a non-compliant phase where we don't know why you've got this thing in our mouth and we don't want to have anything to do with it. And we're going to chew it and bite it and try to pull your hand out and all sorts of things. There was a point for probably a year and a half, where if we just got the toothbrush in my husband's mouth at one time during the day, we thought that was a win. Now we're back to the other side, back to more compliant. We brush his teeth 3 times a day now. So you don't have to give it up completely, but you do need to realize you're going to go through a very difficult phase.
The messy middle.
Now, one thing I didn't learn about till later, we use these now, but I could have used them in the messy middle, and Sue did use these, is oral swabs, disposable oral swabs. And you get mouthwash. We use the Advanced Dental Care mouthwash for gum disease because I figure that's just one more set of chemicals that it can help in his mouth. And brush his teeth, and we put the oral swab in there, and we clean inside his mouth behind. He doesn't. He kind of likes it. So it's mouthwash. How it doesn't taste bad, and get underneath his gums and everything. And there's food that comes out when you do that.
Oh yeah.
So an oral swab is an extra level of dental care that you can take advantage of. And I know you use those.
I did. They worked really great, and Jack liked them, and I also used them on his tongue.
All right. So whatever method you use, remember back to what we say just about everything. Put your best face on, smile, think about your body language, say thank you, give them instructions, tell them what you're doing. Can we brush your teeth?
Some people will still let you, the people who were our next door neighbors, they were able to use dental floss the whole time.
Oh my
with their
goodness.
loved one.
That's impressive. And I think Mike's mom Kathy told me, I think she actually in the process, she would sit there as entertainment and floss her own teeth.
Okay.
So don't give up on dental floss either.
Don't give up on dental floss either. So, but be prepared. Yes.
All right. You ready to move on to trimming hair?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's see what happens.
All right. So the 4th tip is trimming hair. And this is going to include a variety of different kinds of hair. There's the hair on top of our head. There is the hair on the eyebrows. And then there is the hair in and around the nose. So we'll start with the haircuts. Several different things. So in the beginning, if your loved one is used to going to someone to have their hair done, uh, one of the things you could do is you can go and ask them, the hairstylist, to teach you how to style their hair. Because you don't need to be a graduate from beauty school. You just want to do it, well enough to try to do
Something.
it. Yeah. So my dad's hair was always styled. Jack, we went from a hairstyle, he had a full head of hair, to a buzz cut. And that was great. Then with women, some of them, you'll cut their hair shorter, and that's great. It'll be a much easier style. And yet, one of the things that we learned is you want to learn where cowlicks are and where their hair naturally goes, because sometimes if hair is cut shorter for men or for women, then it'll just get in their way, and it'll be more frustrating for them. So, especially for women, sometimes it's better to let their hair grow out
Interesting.
so that the hair could actually be put up like in a soft bun above their head or things like that.
That's interesting.
And so earlier on in the diagnosis, start evaluating cutting their hair, learning how to cut it, what's going to be the easiest style, and something that they're going to be comfortable with, so that you can go through the process. Because ultimately, one of the things that will happen is they're going to forget how to sit into a barber chair. So just like with the dentist, the barber's chair or hair salon's chair, whatever it is, those are difficult for them to figure out because of the legs on them to get in. So you're going to need to be figuring out how to do it on your own. And then, especially when they become bed bound, you're going to have another opportunity with it. So,
and my mother-in-law's hairdresser, we were talking about my father-in-law, and she volunteered to come to the house and cut his hair, and she did.
and that's just
So
great.
it's another option.
It's great to ask if they will
never
do
thought to ask. I never
Yeah.
would have thought to ask her, but she said, "Oh, I'll come to your house and cut his hair,"
which is wonderful, because the less they have to do to be involved with, and then when they cut their hair, they can normally do, whether it's a man or a woman,
and they do their eyebrows, and
trim the
everything.
eyebrows and things like that. So now the other thing that we did with Jack is he got to where he wasn't really thrilled having his hair cut. So
just like everything else, this is a phase.
This was a phase. So it was okay, if I cut part of it, I cut part of it. Now, my trick was, and it worked the whole time, I just shave his hair when he was sleeping. I'd give him a hair and sometimes it was after he'd eaten, because he was going to nap after he ate. So he was going to be more compliant. So the nails and the hair and the things like that, I could get those done at those periods of time.
And start from behind if you can, because same thing is
not when they're bedbound, but while he was up. Tell what you did with Kim.
He sits on the sofa and he falls asleep after he's eaten. And so we just started the back of his head, and he'd be like this. But if you start from behind, you can get a lot done. Yeah. But the funny thing is, then to your point, it's not always going to get all done at once. So his whole back of his head would be hair would be cut, but not the front. Yeah. But that's okay, because we got some of it done. Tomorrow we work on one side, then the next side. All right.
We do whatever it is. And everybody's hair is different. But for example, with Jack, I left the front part of his hair a little bit longer, because he did have a beautiful full head of hair. But there's a lot of heat generated, because his head was literally against a pillow all the time. And I got him down to a one tight on the back of his head. So from right here all the way back. But nobody looking at him would know that. I just didn't want him to be hot and sweaty.
Plus, he's not going to a black tie event either.
He is not going to a black tie event either. So it's adapting to all those things. Okay, then the eyebrows, you want to trim the eyebrows. Those now, fortunately, they have these battery operated hair trimmers for men and women, and they're fabulous, because sometimes they'll let you cut them, and then if they don't, because they see scissors coming at them,
Plus
either do it
stab them
when they're asleep. You can do it when they're asleep, or the nose trimmers. Now, what I did with both the electric razor and the little trimmers is I would rub them on their face first, so they could feel them, and they could feel. Then I would start the vibration, and I didn't have the vibration right where it was cutting, but I would do the side of it so they could feel it. Then I would go in there, and then for cleaning inside the nose, I would push the nose in so I could get in there. Now I would do one nostril, do something else. So it was not a continuous thing unless they were asleep. So for all of these things, again, number one is, let go of having to have all of it done and done really great all the time. It just, it's adapting to getting it done, and doing it at the time when it's going to be easiest for them. And then just give yourself so much grace.
Agree. And this is about observing and adjusting, because everything we talked about starts early in their diagnosis until late stage dementia. So everything is observe and adjust, and just realize
way,
that you're going to go through a messy middle before you come out the other side across all these topics.
Yes.
All right. We ready to summarize?
I think we're ready to summarize.
All right. Let's summarize. Today, we talked about helping you help your care receiver with grooming. We covered 4 main tips, 4 areas. First, we talked about shaving. Then we talked about trimming their nails. Then we talked about cleaning their teeth. And finally, trimming hair. If you have tips that you think would help people in any of these areas, please leave them on our Facebook page or our Instagram page. We'd love to hear from you. If you like this podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe and rate and review it. We appreciate that very, very much.
We sure do.
This is all about observing, adjusting, and giving yourself and your care receiver a lot of grace.
Yeah. We're all on this journey together.
Yes, we are.